Is microphone on? Okay. Amazing. Welcome everybody to our first sustainability lunch series of the spring semester. If you haven't yet scanned in, I'm going to leave this slide up for just a few more seconds, if you wouldn't mind. This helps with our event tracking data. So I'm just going to give you a quick moment to scan in and have it. There's the seats in the middle there. Okay, good. Well, welcome to Exploring Sustainability Internships. I am personally so excited to see so many students in the room right now. My name is Jen Graham. I'm the Associate Director within the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative. I oversee all things related to students on our team. So that includes the Sustainability Certificate, that includes co-curricular programming like this, alumni engagement, but it also entails assistance with internship and job search strategies. So if you're thinking about an internship in sustainability, come introduce yourself. Let's have a conversation, but I'm excited to share with you just some resources that are available to you as a first-year student today. I'm also joined by a few of my colleagues. Susan Todd is a Senior Associate Director within the CDO. Susan, do you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. So, hi everybody. I'm Susan Todd. I work on the employee relations on recruiting team within the CDO. And my industries are consulting and West Coast Tech and West Coast FinTech. But I also work with Jen on the sustainability initiative.
Thanks, Susan. I'm also joined by my colleague, Sophia Governo. Sophia is the program assistant within our team, and she makes everything run flawlessly. So the lunches that you have in front of you, even the room reservation, we all know how competitive that can be. She is literally the backbone of our team. So Sophia, thanks for joining us. Okay, so what are we going to cover today? First, we're going to talk very briefly about the sustainability career landscape. I usually start my talks with just an overview of where we see the job market in sustainability in particular, but I think that I don't have to sell that to you anymore. We all know the impact of climate change on business and companies and hiring at this point. However, if you're interested in learning more about that, we did an event back in the fall all about sustainability careers. And what we can do is we can email the recording out to anybody that signed up on Sloan Groups if you want to watch that program. So if you're interested in taking a deeper dive, we'll share that resource after this. But I wanted to focus on today's program, all about exploring your options, some internship search strategies, and then more specifically, highlight some resources that are available to you as a student right now. So we're going to talk more specifically about some subsidized internship programs that I oversee, one that is open right now and one that will be open later this spring. And then we're going to hear directly from a few of our second-year MBA students. They're all recipients of the programs that I'm going to talk about, and they're going to share their individual career journey at this point. And I think it's really a good perspective to get as they can share that they sat in your seats, just a year ago. So as I mentioned, climate change is impacting every area of business. This is no secret. We've seen disruptions to supply chain. We've seen physical risks within business. We've seen PR nightmares in terms of company engagement and commitments or not meeting their net zero goals. And this is all to say that every job at this point needs to be a sustainability job. We're in an era where every single person and every single job has the opportunity to make an impact and create a more sustainable future. So again, this is something that I don't think I need to sell to this audience anymore, but instead talk about how can we land these opportunities. So if we talk about a sustainability job, what does that mean? So you might be a student who came to Sloan thinking, I want to land a finance job. I want to land a job in operations. It's pretty straightforward, right? Industry-focused job search. You know what companies focus in those areas, the types of job titles that focus on those areas. But if you come in and say, I want a sustainability job, what does that mean? That can mean a whole bunch of different things. So what we do in terms of kind of narrowing in on this conversation is we like to start with this really easy 2x2 matrix, this visual to start this conversation. We took this 2x2 matrix from our colleague, Katie Cross. Katie Cross is the director of the Sustainability Center at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. She actually wrote a book called Profession and Purpose a few years ago. This is an awesome resource for any business student who's exploring a climate-related job search. And she asked the question, do you want to make a green company big or a big company green? Right? This is important in terms of developing a strategy and how to apply to those jobs. So what she's done is she's just categorized the job search into these 4 buckets. So if you're thinking about a company and organization, do you want to work for a more traditional, quote unquote, traditional company, or one that's mission or sustainability oriented? And likewise for a job or role, do you want your job to be focused on sustainability day in and day out, or do you want it that more traditional, say, finance role within a larger organization? So thinking about a sustainability job, I think it's very worth your while to look at this and think about what category you want to fit into. Do you want to take your finance background and apply that to a sustainability organization, say like a Patagonia? Do you want to be the chief sustainability officer for a more traditional company and make impact that way? Or do you want to go all in and work for a climate tech startup, have a sustainability job, oversee all the operations for that? I think it's worthwhile to just kind of take a look at this before you jump into your internship or job search. Now, I wanted to take that matrix and actually break down and share with you, where do MIT Sloan sustainability students land? Now, the data that I'm sharing with you is just from the past 2 cohorts of the sustainability certificate. That includes more than just the MBA students, so a little bit of a caveat here. This includes our executive MBA program. This includes our Sloan Fellow students. So you're going to see the vast majority are still going into these traditional organizations in traditional roles. This data, however, is shifting. In these other 3 categories, we are seeing growth. As I mentioned, many of these students in these executive programs are involved in the certificate. A lot of them are sponsored. So oftentimes they're going back to these traditional organizations, or they're working full-time during their program. So just kind of a caveat, this is not just an MBA perspective, this is overall. But I think helpful when you're thinking about, where do students with this certificate land? What are the types of jobs that these Sloan sustainability students get after graduation? So as I mentioned, this data is from the past 2 years. So as you can see, I've highlighted very specific alumni of ours and where they fit in this 2x2 matrix. So you can see the types of roles that they go into, the companies that they work for. And I think this is a really helpful tool to kind of, again, visualize your own strategy. I would also recommend reaching out to these individuals. The Sloanies Helping Sloanies model is very prevalent in the sustainability community. And all of these folks are very tied into the initiative, even just a few years after graduation. So I'm going to share the slides again after this program, so you have this. But I highly recommend taking advantage of the fact that you see these names up on the screen right now. They all are doing sustainability work. So let's take a look at some other pieces of data that will be helpful as you're thinking about your own strategy. So again, using the placement data from our past 2 cohorts, on the right, you can see what industries they work in. A lot of them still land in these consulting roles, but we also see growth in energy and tech, which is really exciting, and some of these other areas. But I want to focus in on how they landed their jobs. So on the left, more specifically, I want to take a look at the fact that almost a 1/4 of our students landed their full-time job because of their summer internship, which just highlights the fact that a summer internship and your internship search strategy is imperative to your full-time search, especially in the area of sustainability. And then I also want to point out the 34%. So over a 1/3 of our students actually landed their jobs either through an external job posting opportunity or through their own personal networking. So it's just something to kind of think about, again, as you're thinking about your strategy. So let's talk more about a job search strategy. Many of you who are in the room today are familiar with this visual. So you've probably engaged with the CDO at this point, and you know the different concepts in terms of a job search strategy. The highway, the dirt road, the jungle. Does this look familiar? Yes, a little bit. So the highway model, this is how we depict these quote unquote traditional recruiting tracks. So very traditional companies will come to campus, do company presentations, do on-campus interviewing. We'll be recruiting in droves, are specifically looking for MIT Sloan MBA talent. These people are in this quadrant, the traditional and traditional. They very likely took advantage of these on-campus kind of traditional recruiting strategies. But the other three quadrants, I want to focus in on the dirt road and the jungle. Now, the dirt road is an approach where you're going to leverage resources both internally here at MIT Sloan and externally. So it's just a combination of different resources. So that might be the internship programs that I share with you today. That might be a connection through an alum of ours. That might be through some of the external job boards that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. And then likewise for jungle, very self-directed, startup, very entrepreneurial approach. You're kind of creating the path as you're walking it, right? One thing I want to point out with these three strategies is the timeline. So the highway, these more kind of established recruiting frameworks, they recruit early. In fact, some of these organizations have probably already come on campus and done on-campus recruiting and interviews. Is that true? The dirt road, however, I'd say is about mid-spring. So that's where a lot of these internship programs fall. A lot of more job postings are coming in at this moment. And I'd say that's between now and even post-spring break, so April timeframe. But the jungle, which I see a lot of students fall into this category, will find opportunities really late as end of May, early June. I've seen students kind of land their opportunity right before they're onboarded. And that's because these smaller organizations, maybe these more startup aligned organizations, don't know their hiring capacity until they need you now. And that is true every single year. So if you're thinking about maybe a startup in the climate tech space, maybe a nonprofit organization, just kind of keep this timeline in mind, because I think a lot of students get very stressed out towards the end of the spring, but just know that this timeline is very normal. So let's talk about resources. That dirt road and that jungle approach. What can you utilize right now as a student? First and foremost, job boards. There is no shortage of climate-focused job boards out there. I am just highlighting a very quick snapshot of some that you should absolutely bookmark today. Some of these might look familiar to you, some of them might not. Some of them are industry specific. Some of them are kind of more focused on sustainability overall. Next, climate-focused events. The MIT Energy and Climate Club is hosting a career fair next Friday. If you are not going to that, you should go to it. Got it. Greentown Labs also hosts a lot of career and internship fairs. I think one per semester. I believe they're hosting one.
There's one tonight from 4 to 6.
From 4 to 6.
For internships. Yes, there are 20 companies there.
Amazing. Okay, Greentown Labs. Go to their website as soon as we wrap. College to Climate. This is actually a very new platform that Susan has engaged with. And what they are doing, it sounds like it's undergrad focused. It's undergrad and grad. But what they do is they cultivate Boston area career fairs specific to climate jobs, and they post them on their website.
And they will be at Greentown Labs tonight.
Amazing. Terra.do. I actually have never heard it said out loud. They host several virtual career fairs. They're hosting a full-time career fair tomorrow, virtually. Again, I'll share all of this information with you as soon as we wrap. But another great resource, they have a job board that you can visit at any time. But this virtual career fair happening tomorrow, I think it's from like 12 to 2 Eastern time. Additional resources. If you're an MIT Sloan student, you have access to the CDO's industry advisors. So they have what they call industry communities and specific alumni that work in all of these areas. They have placement directories. So if you're thinking about a startup, a smaller organization, and you have no idea where to start in terms of compensation, take a look at these directories. They can be a really helpful tool as you negotiate. MBA Edge is Duke University's career platform. They actually have so many amazing resources for MBA students. They break down not only the career search strategy for climate, but they have specific categories for things like energy, impact investing, and other areas. American Climate Corps and MCJ Collective Community, just two really cool resources I highly recommend checking out. And then lastly, LinkedIn groups. I just looked through my own LinkedIn and who I follow and what groups I'm a part of, and just brought up these three, but there are so many groups that are out there specific for climate opportunities. So very much advocate for leveraging LinkedIn resources. I do my best to kind of share what I find on WhatsApp and other channels, but if you come across any in your findings, please feel free to share them with the community as well. Okay, so let's shift our focus and talk about two specific programs that you qualify for as a first-year MBA that both Susan and myself oversee. The first is a Sustainability Initiative Internship Program. This is where I will work with the CDO to source internships that are specific to sustainability. What happens is that we post them as a collective, and the first 5 students to accept an offer from a participating company will receive an additional $5,000 subsidy toward your internship. So let's go more in depth. All of these internship opportunities are currently posted and live on Career Central. The easiest way to find them is to just search Sustainability Internship Program. It'll be right there in the title. I believe we have 17 jobs from 16 companies, which I'll highlight in just a moment. Applications and interviews are open, and interviews are happening on a rolling basis. So they're going to be open until the position is filled. We've already caught wind that some companies are reaching out for interviews already. So if you haven't yet taken a look at this list and applied, highly recommend acting early. As I mentioned, the first 5 to accept an offer through this program will receive $5,000 directly from MIT. Companies, on the other hand, must agree to pay the intern a minimum of $10,000 toward an 8 to 10 week full-time internship. So that is already understood on the company side, so that we can subsidize the rest to make sure that it's a competitive internship for you. Positions, so say you're number 6 on the list, there are opportunities to apply for funding that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. So we don't want you to not apply because you think the funding has drained. There will be other avenues and opportunities to apply for funding if that is what is the hurdle for you to apply to that role. Graduating students, or if you're class of 24, you cannot apply. You must be pursuing a summer internship midway between semesters. And if you don't have access to Career Central, so oftentimes we work with SDM students, TPP students who are in a multi-year program, just email Susan and she can get you those job descriptions. Here are all the companies that have posted as part of this program this year. Some of them have actually posted multiple opportunities onto Career Central, but I've also highlighted the industry because a lot of these companies you might not be familiar with. You might not recognize their name, and that's intentional. That's because companies that have the means to hire an MIT Sloan student don't need this additional funding. So we're seeking organizations that need this additional subsidy so that we can provide that to the student. But we have, as you can see, we have companies in the VC space, manufacturing, renewable energy, even biotech. So some really cool projects that are included in this program. Timeline, as I mentioned, applications are open now on Career Central. The final deadline for all of these are March 29th. I highly doubt we're going to reach that point before all 5 awards are given out. Some of the companies will actually do additional recruiting events on campus. Supply Chain Capital actually did one yesterday to connect with students. So make sure you're checking Career Central and seeing what events are happening. Internships, as I mentioned, must be 8 to 10 weeks. The start and end date will be determined by the employer. You'll receive the subsidy the first week of your internship, so early June. And all that we ask is that you check in with us periodically and that you provide a testimonial about your experience at the end of it. Pretty straightforward. Any questions about the internship program? Yes.
So do you only apply for, I'll just pick Amgen because it was first on the list. let's say I'm interested in that. Do I only apply to the Amgen thing and then it qualifies me for this, or is there a separate application?
Yep, great question. It's only the one application. So the job posting that's on Career Central, they might ask for you to apply like on their company website and through Career Central. Some job postings will identify that, but each one will say that in the description. But there is no additional application to apply for that funding. Great. All right, so let's talk about the other subsidized internship program that we oversee, and that's the Sloan Impact Fund. Now, the biggest difference between the internship program and the impact fund is how the internship is sourced. So while we find the opportunities for the internship program, you will find the internship yourself, and then you apply for additional funding if need be. The application will open later in spring. So as I mentioned, this aligns with that later recruiting period for the dirt road and the jungle. We'll open up applications after spring break, and we often will leave them open until the end of the semester. I will announce when applications are open via our WhatsApp newsletter in the classroom, so just make sure that you're staying in tune with our announcements. The application itself will consist of 2 essays, short essays from you, your resume, and then there's a portion where you need to confirm with your hiring manager. We need to hear from them to just confirm that you're moving forward with this internship. There's a whole committee that reviews all of the applications, so make sure that you are putting in the effort and putting in the details because there's several of us that actually will determine whether or not to give you funding and how much. So you can apply for up to $5,000, and this will be dependent on how many students apply this year, how much you're being compensated by the employer. We take all of that into consideration before we distribute the award. And then similar to the internship program, you'll receive funding at the start of your internship in early June. Eligibility. So similar to the internship program, you cannot be a graduating student to apply for this funding. Your internship must be an MBA level or management related. It must be within the scope of an MBA student. It must have defined deliverables, and it must display some sort of impact or relevancy to sustainability. It cannot be academic research, and it cannot be you or your friend starting your own startup and using this as your initial capital. For the host organization, it could be a nonprofit, it can be a government entity, it can be in the private sector. The role or the organization must have a mission or an alignment with sustainability, must demonstrate a commitment to the internship. So the organization must either pay you additionally or give you resources for the internship project itself. And as I mentioned, again, no early stage startups. We do say that we need at least Series A funding. And again, applications will open after spring break. Any questions on the impact fund before we move on? No, great. So a couple of other exciting opportunities for funding specific to MIT Sloan students. These next 3 that I will mention are all overseen by the PKG Center. They do a lot of work in the nonprofit and public sector. They have these really amazing opportunities for funding that I think not many students are aware of. The first is the PKG Fellowship. So this is an opportunity to apply for additional funding. Say you're working for a nonprofit organization, and applications are actually open through the summer. And if you're interested, you can reach out to the PKG Center directly, or I'm happy to make an introduction. Last year, they also created this Freedom Summer Fellowship. Last summer was the first summer that they offered this, but this actually matches graduate students to local and regional development projects focused on clean energy. So I actually just got wind of it this year. Very exciting opportunity if you're interested in this space at all. Applications are due April 1st, and I have my colleagues' contact information here if you're interested in learning more. And then lastly, some MIT Sloan students actually qualify for federal work study. This is part of your financial aid package, but there are students who actually qualify for this additional aid. So what you can do if you're working for a US-based nonprofit or government agency, you can apply, see if you're qualified and apply for additional funding this way. It's also overseen by the PKG Center. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely recommend reaching out to them. Okay, so with that, I would love to pivot the conversation and invite 4 amazing second-year students to talk a little bit about their internship experiences. So welcome to our panelists. I have a couple of microphones just there to share, but I would love to first hear just a brief introduction of yourself. Where did you work over the summer? Title, the project that you worked on, and how did you land that opportunity? So maybe Rebecca, I'm going to kick it over to you first.
Sure. Okay, this is on. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm a second year MBA. I'm also doing the dual policy degree at HKS. So in 2 out of 3 years, I spent the summer at ARPA-E, which stands for the Advanced Research Projects Agency-Energy, sort of a mouthful, but it's a subsidiary of the Department of Energy, and it's in some ways they're like early stage R&D branch. I found this opportunity literally on the Career Center website. I was doing a lot of like organic networking, and this was the most sort of like linear recruiting process I had last year. It was honestly sort of a random outbound. But what I ended up doing was serving as a tech to market scholar, and happy to chat more about that program generally. But I was sort of on the commercialization side of our base. They have 2 sides. One is more like hard research, hard science, and the other is commercialization of technologies that they're funding. The specific projects that I was working on sat under this research group called Hestia, which is looking at the development of carbon sequestering building materials. 2 projects that I worked on, one was catalyzing a market for biogenic insulation, and the other was looking at commercialization strategies for ultra low and carbon negative cement. So passing it over to Amar.
Well, hey everyone, my name's Amar. I'm a second year at Sloan. I was at the venture capital firm, Clean Energy Ventures, over the summer. I found this, I kind of wanted to do climate tech venture capital and was kind of looking around, but the reason I ended up at Clean Energy Ventures is that a friend of mine who was in the TPP program actually interned there last year or the summer before I did, and I worked with her on at the Energy Hack, and then got to speaking with her about how she was able to find the internship, and she kind of put me in touch with them. So I was really utilizing the MIT network. And then at Clean Energy Ventures, I worked on a bunch of different projects. There was a bunch of other interns there as well, and we teamed up on a couple of different initiatives. So did a deep dive on ag tech and decarbonization within the agriculture sector, focused on working with a couple of portfolio companies, looked at kind of how to streamline their internal pipeline processes, and then also did a project on venture capital exit best practices. So how can the company improve its exit practices for its portfolio companies?
Hey guys, my name is Alice. I'm also a second year. So last summer I was at Supply Change Capital, and it's a venture firm that's focused on how climate change is impacting the food tech supply chain and what are the investment opportunities associated with it. I had a fantastic time over the summer, so I spent most of my time talking to founders, doing research into some theses that we had on ag tech, specifically around biotech, robotics, and AI. And in addition, also spent a lot of time diligencing companies, writing investment memos, and basically looking at exit opportunities that we had. The way that I got it was basically, it was a combination of looking at the Career Central website as well as just looking at what was in WhatsApp. So Rafaela, who had graduated in 22, actually ended up, posting in WhatsApp. And so I ended up, chatting with her offline in addition to applying online. And I think what really clinched it for me was that basically during spring break, I was doing some of the interview materials for it. And I think that kind of helped push me over the edge a little bit because I was a little earlier than most folks.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ingrid. I was working with Context Labs last summer. I was attracted to it mostly because I had previously worked in the blockchain space, but more on the financial side, and was looking for new applications of blockchain. And I know now everyone talks about AI. No one cares about blockchain anymore, but I'm still excited about it. But was looking for different applications and really wanted my role to have a significant impact. So I first heard about Context Labs by going through the lists of where people started working after they graduated. I went through those lists and wrote down like everyone that I thought was interesting and had like an interesting job. And I reached out to them after that. And Context Labs basically has a blockchain software that allows companies to track their carbon emissions. So I thought that was very interesting. Wanted to learn more about it, and ended up like applying for the position. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. You shared a little bit about taking a deeper dive and seeing where students landed. Were there other resources that you all utilized during your internship search, either internally at MIT or externally while you were applying?
Yeah, I would say definitely going through those lists. I think especially for internships, if you know that a company previously offered an internship for an MIT student, they're very likely to be capable of offering again. So definitely like look into that. And anyone that I saw a remote connection to on LinkedIn, like my undergrad institution, like MIT, I would be reaching out and saying we have a lot in common and be asking to chat as well.
I think one other thing that I did actually during the semester that was really helpful to me was I actually, sourced two internships like during the summer that weren't posted. So, for me, it was a really cool opportunity to, design my own job description in a way. So I was first working on strategy and biz dev for this startup called Lithios during the semester. It's basically a startup that's focused around commercializing some really cool lithium extraction tech developed at MIT. And so like that was an opportunity to turn into like something for the summer as well. And then I also did something for Nova Loop, which is, a series, I think they're series B now, focused around, plastic upcycling. And so, those are some really cool opportunities that can also kind of set your resume up really well for your summer internship, especially if you have no experience in sustainability.
Yeah, the other resource I utilized was the different clubs at MIT. So attending things that the Sustainability Initiative put on, the Sloan Energy Club. A lot of the lunch and learns are pretty informative and teach you a little bit. I came into Sloan not having like any sustainability background, and so those were very educational for me. And then also they recommended resources that I could go ahead and like buy or look into and things like that. And so that prepared me very well for A, figuring out the type of climate or sustainability job that I wanted, and B, like preparing me for the interview so that I could speak about the topics that needed to be discussed.
Yeah, my processes have been a little weird, so I'll share that caveat up front. The energy hack that Amar mentioned, I was one of the planners of it last year, and through that, I developed a lot of close connections with the sponsoring agencies, and completely outside of a job search, was just sort of able to build up a rapport with folks who then, felt like colleagues or thought partners or whatever. And so a few internship offers just sort of came organically out of that without really having to like do a formal job search process. Funnily enough, ARPI was the only job search like posted job that I replied to. And I'm currently doing this independent study on building decarbonization, which likewise is sort of because I'm also going into summer 2 of internships because I have a third year of HKS, and is similarly sort of yielding offers that are off outside of real job postings, only because I feel like I'm getting to know folks from just like a curiosity and sector specificity perspective, and then things are growing out of that. So I don't know how useful that is, but for me, I've found most fruit, I guess, sort of being problem led and letting jobs grow out of that.
Awesome. I want to be mindful of time, so I have just one more question, and then I'll open it up for anybody else to ask questions of myself or our panelists. And that's, what advice would you give to any first-year students who are now just starting their internship search? Open to anyone.
I can start. I think something that I did, especially my first semester, and then as well, like a little bit my second semester too, is just to like go to things. So things that are events that are focused in the area that you're interested in. And if you honestly, if you go to enough of those events with people that are either in the MIT or Cambridge or Boston community, you'll kind of create enough like serendipitous connections with people that you'll be able to chart your own path into where to go. I think that was super helpful for me. It really helped me build up like a climate ecosystem and like a personal network. And then on top of that, like doing things like Rebecca was talking about like volunteering to help out with things and organizing things, and especially events that might involve external parties, gives you a lot of exposure and opportunities as well. So that allows you to cultivate a network that you can grow from.
The other thing that I would say is be as specific as you can about, what you're looking for, what your skills are, and where you can best apply them. I think the thing about sustainability that is so great, but also so hard, is that it's so broad. It's bigger than tech. It covers so many different disciplines, so many different industries. And so I think really understanding not only where your passion is, but where your past skills are really applicable, and really being able to tell that story makes it so much easier to recruit than, basically, shooting scattershot across an entire field where you don't look competitive, compared to other folks who may have prior experience.
Sorry, I'm just thinking, what's the best advice to give? Do you want to go for it first?
I mean, I guess +1 to what Alice said, and maybe an outgrowth of what I was saying earlier, like the more specific you can be, the better. And I've chatted with a bunch of folks, this was more last year, who were like broadly looking at climate tech VC and weren't getting a lot of reception. And I think like have also talked to folks on the interviewers from that who are like, yeah, we're just sort of sick of all these people being like, climate. And I think like I know from my own experience, there's some like, not remorse, but like anxiety about getting too specific too fast. And like, what if I'm picking the wrong lane? And like, what if I go too narrow too soon? But I think that like with the knowledge that you can change your focus over time, having a really specific focus, A, helps you stand out, and B, helps people know who to connect you to versus just being like, I don't even know what pile to put them in. So to the extent you can sort of brand yourself with a narrow focus, that's just helpful for people bucketing you and for you to build up a differentiated base of expertise.
Yeah, I would say keep yourself open to different possibilities. I worked in the same sector, the same company, like before coming to MIT. So I really wanted to put myself out there, like try something that I hadn't worked with in the past. And I think a lot of people are just in the mindset of, oh, I'm going to get this internship and then I'm going to get hired by this internship and stay with them. And if that happens, it's great. But also give yourself the chance to try out something different, because it's very unlikely that, again, in the future, you're going to have the chance of spending 2 to 3 months like trying out something completely new. So take advantage of that.
Okay, happy to open it up to the audience for any questions to myself or the panelists.
Yes.
I would like to know if you're going back to your companies after your internship, or you expect to go back to your company to do an offer or behave.
Great question. So for anybody who didn't hear it, plans post-graduation or this upcoming summer? Yeah.
I'm not still looking for opportunities. I think most of our class are looking for opportunities right now. Still very focused on social impact space. I think I really liked my internship. I really appreciate what the company does. I don't think the role was a good fit for me. Like, I think that was my main issue.
I'm still recruiting as well for the year. And I have to say that with, basically saying that, Supply Chain Capital was an amazing place to intern. I had such a great time. I think I also just realized that, VC is something that I want to do maybe about in 10 or 15 years, maybe not like immediately after graduation. And so like for me, it kind of affirmed for me that I really do find the startup space really fascinating. And it was a really good opportunity for me to look at a bunch of startups that I might consider working at after graduation.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to Alice. I wanted to like test the hypothesis of venture capital in climate when I came to Sloan. And so it like similar to Alice is something that I enjoyed, but it was something that I would want to do later in my career and maybe not directly after graduation. I'm gonna be going into consulting to kind of try to focus on uh, like climate tech for private equity due diligence there. Um, but again, like I did this internship and I'm happy I did it really to test that like climate tech venture capital hypothesis.
Yeah, so the government usually doesn't do return offers in like the same ways that later stage private companies do. So I sort of went into last summer knowing that it would be a wonderful 3 months. I will say that like after the internship, I was invited to speak at this conference, and through this conference met a bunch of people, and through that I'm like working with a coalition that's sort of RPE adjacent to build out this like futures market for cement. So there have definitely been like follow-on opportunities that came from the internship, but that are much less linear than like formal return offers.
Oh, just to be fair, the Sloan student that interned the year before me did go back to the company. So they do like hire people back.
Questions? Yeah.
Just wondering, how has your concept of impact changed before and after the internship? So your consideration of how sustainability can play well in business strategy in a more of a lecture context versus when you go into the industry and try to apply it, how has it changed your concept of impact?
Great question.
I guess on the venture cap. So when you're in school, you learn about an idea and you're like, wow, that's a really good idea. I think like it could be implemented um and it can be super successful. But then in venture capital, you learn a little bit more about the reality of competitive markets. And so you think that an idea or industry or subsector is really interesting, but then you realize that there's dozens and dozens of companies in that specific issue trying to solve that problem. And so that was kind of the reality check for me of thinking about like, okay, this sector is maybe a little bit more crowded than I thought it was. So a company doing innovative things there is cool, but there's a ton of companies doing very similar things. Um, and then there's other industries or subsectors that you didn't realize were very non-competitive, and there weren't a lot of companies there. There wasn't a lot of investment going into that space. So that was kind of interesting for me to see where the dollars were going and where the companies were.
Definitely couldn't agree more with what Amar was saying. And I think I'll tweak your question a little bit to talk a little bit more about like personal impact. So one thing that I found really thought provoking during the year was, so there was a bunch of Sonys who graduated a couple years ago, and they started a company around making kind of like Ubers more like, environmentally friendly by enabling like drivers to use EVs. And they got to a point where they were doing it after graduation. And then I think about a year in, they realized they were actually running a rental car agency, and they didn't want to be doing that as part of their day-to-day life, even though it was really like, incorporated with the social impact that they wanted to have. So I think like my lesson coming, or just like looking into that experience, is really think about if you can do what you want to do every single day for like a couple of years, in addition to the kind of impact that you want to have, because I think that's a really good indicator of, what you can sign up for. And what will really keep kind of that passion for your job like alive for a few years.
I want to be mindful of time since we're a minute over, but panelists, are you going to stick around for a few minutes to answer questions? Awesome. I will also stick around. But before we close, I just want to leave you with 2 more resources. If you do not receive our newsletters and communication, highly recommend you do so. I also advocate that you sign up for our WhatsApp community. It's very robust, and we have students posting opportunities in there. I post opportunities in there all the time. I will be posting the few career fairs that we mentioned earlier in there as soon as we wrap. So make sure you're signed up and connected to the initiative so that you can really take advantage of some of these resources. But thank you all for joining today. Happy to stick around and answer any other questions. But special thanks to our second years for sharing your perspective. Thanks so much.